Welcome to the Consultants Way podcast, your go-to resource for all things professional services consulting. Brought to you by McMahon & Ransford, a strategy consulting firm with over 30 years of experience helping B2B organizations achieve sustainable growth, and the Consultants Way, the leading comprehensive consultant development program. Hosted by Dean McMahon and Anthony Paluska, we share expert insights, firsthand experiences, and conversations with industry leaders on the topics that interest you most.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of their employer, company, or affiliated organizations.
Welcome back to the Consultants Way podcast. Anthony Paluska, Dean McMahon. Dean, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for asking. It's we're still in the end of the year, good weather before it becomes like, as I heard somebody this morning and say smoking hot, and Houston will be smoking hot. So, but no, doing great.
So I had a funny experience just a couple of days ago related to this podcast, and then I'm gonna try and bring it back to you and try and replicate the same thing for you. So I was talking to somebody who actually happened to be an ex-podcast guest, and we were just catching up, and he says, "Hey, I hope your neck's feeling better." And I was like, "Oh man, my neck is feeling better." And I was like, "Wonder how you?" And I was like, "Oh, like last time or like a couple of episodes ago when we were recording this, I had a neck pain, and I was telling you about it on the front end of it." And so like sometimes we're out here and we're talking through this, and I kind of forget that there's like people that listen on the other end of this, and I was like, "Oh, okay, like yeah, that's kind of neat." So in this case, right before we were recording with our guest Steve Curran here, and I'll introduce him in just a second. We were talking about mispronouncing names and stuff like that, and he thought that people should start calling you Dean McCant, and
McCann, instead of Dean McCann,
not Dean McCann, which is
my name is Dean McMahon. People call me McCann, like the shoe, and he did have a good take on that, and that's why we're not going to actually have him on the podcast.
No, so my goal here is that somebody that hears this next time they see you, they just say, "Hey, Dean McCann, how are you today?"
I got to tell you, joking about that, I get messages every time on like, "Quit wearing just a white shirt. Why don't you wear a golf?" And I do have blue shirts.
We got to stop giving people out the opportunity to provide feedback, or else.
Yeah. Well, I get a lot of questions about my hairdo too, but it's. I think it's very consistent. My hair.
There you go. Good. So on to our guest. So today we have Steve Curran. He's joining us today. Steve's got a lot of experiences. He'll dive into in professional services landscape, but he's played this interesting career arc across his career. He's been in sales, he's been in professional services, he's worked across these different things, and as we dive into what ends up being a couple of different sporting analogies, he talks about at the very end this he's very team oriented and team mindset, and it really comes across as part of this conversation, and I think that is critical to making sure that PS actually can play the role that it needs to play within the organization, which is how do you build strong relationships and partnerships with sales? How do you uncomplexify all of the complexity that exists in the post-sales world where so many different of our functions are talking to the same client, trying to solve very similar outcomes? And so, Steve, I think you did an excellent job kind of walking through some real practical examples on all of those topics. Dean, any big takeaways from
you? Yeah, everybody who comes on, think about consulting PS like an elephant, and we're all touching the elephant in a dark room in a different way. What I think Steve does better than anybody we've had on, not that other people don't get it, but his focus is this: take the complexity out. It's a team sport. Make sure we know how to keep other people up to date, how to play your role, and he really focuses on, in my view, that no matter what's going on, it really ends up on PS's door to make it successful. You're managing all the internal relationships that allow that, but you have to be adroit and you have to move around. Everything doesn't fit in a box, but you're still responsible. And we hear more and more of this from everybody, that PS is going to be more of a profit center, more of an advisory group, more, maybe not more important from the way the CEO sees it yet, but definitely the organizer of success. And he does a really good job of owning that and making sure all those relationships work, as opposed to leaving it to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So really great talk.
Yeah, no, great conversation, and looking forward to sharing that with everybody now. Hey, Steve, how's it going today?
Good, Anthony. How are you doing?
Doing great. We're happy to have you. We're excited to dive into the conversation today. Dean and I will have given a brief introduction about you on the front end of this, but please share with the audience your background and experience.
Yeah, start with your childhood and any traumas, girlfriends, anything you want to see.
Yeah, luckily no traumas. I had a really good childhood. I think overall I've been lucky in life, been lucky in love. I have a wife we've been married 21 years. She's, fantastic. She could definitely do a lot better. So I got very lucky in that department. 2 wonderful stepdaughters, 7 grandkids. And so, lucky across the board. I have no complaints when it comes to
Steve,
childhood through adulthood.
You have one more grandchild than I do. That's not fair.
Yeah. Well, you have some time to catch up. So
yeah, that's right. I have a lot of kids. So I had 5. So I have the momentum on my side.
That's right. You got the numbers. So
that's good. And Steve, and please also dive in a little bit to your work experience and background, specifically in the area of professional services, post-sales, the kind of the topics we're going to be diving into today.
Yeah, so I've been in the post-sale world now almost 20 years, 18 years. I found it by accident. I've been working in the technology space, started entry level in finance. From there, was able to, grow, get some exposure to some other things. I had a boss at that point, my first, what I would call professional company. And I had a boss once I got in the doors, basically took an interest and said, all right, you're here. Now what? How are you going to, what do you want to do next? And I hadn't given it that much thought at that point, but it really opened my eyes and really encouraged me to, explore different opportunities. And so from there, I was able to move into sales in the technology world. It was, it was okay. It wasn't really the passion, and it really wasn't, I didn't get the satisfaction I thought I would get from it. But what I really loved was working with customers and trying to come up with a solution. Right, that's what I really enjoyed. And so, somewhat by accident, I ended up in professional service as a consultant. Started working, the PSA tool, and worked with these smaller companies that were doing managed services, and they literally were working from a spreadsheet or Post-it notes, and you were helping them really evolve into a technical solution and implement and develop business processes that allowed them to scale their business. So, that was everybody's goal. I need to scale. I know the way I'm doing it today is not going to allow me to do that, down the road. And in coming with those customers, and they would come back and be like, oh my God, Steve, I can actually see which contracts are profitable. I can actually manage my tickets. I can automate processes and provide much better service to my clients. And I could see the tangible, real effect it was having. And I just was like, okay, this is where I finally found my home. It took me a couple different paths, but I found where I belong. It's still something I, preach to young kids today, or younger folks, especially as they're, coming out of college and not sure what they want to do. Like, I didn't go to school for professional services. It wasn't, a passion that I knew existed when I was a kid. And careers aren't always, it's not always a direct peak or direct climb up the mountain. Sometimes it's peaks and valleys, and it takes you a little time to find your path. And thankfully I did. And once I found that home, I loved it. And then from there, again, we were a small company at the time. I got to get into leadership roles. Really at the time, the company was just starting to do a global expansion. So when I started, we did about 10 million in revenue. Our global team was 5 people in Albany, New York. So I got to work with a lot of our clients in Europe and in Africa and South America. We had some folks that would work with our customers in APAC at night because they were night owls. I'm a morning person. And then we really were starting to put boots on the ground in those locations. And it was at the time I moved into leadership. So I had the opportunity to build those teams out, really with the mandate of, hey, we're scaling. So it's not one-on-one. It's not going to be this custom solutions. And so I kind of had to figure it on the fly. But what I've operated at that point, and what I still operate from today, is what's the customer experience? What are we trying to achieve? Start with that and then build everything around that. Don't just build, well, it's got to be scalable. That means it's recorded videos, or it's, you know, walk me and taking you through a wizard driven implementation just because it has to be scalable. Like, it still has to deliver what the customer is trying to achieve. And I go back to that when I first got into consulting and I found the niche and why I loved it. I still operate from that principle. I'm like, that's what we have to deliver. The mechanism which we get there, we'll figure out the right way to get there, but that's got to be the center of where we're starting from. We can't start from anywhere else.
Yeah. No. And so your experience in growing that business, your global experience, you're touching all of these different things is a reason why we have you on here today, because you can speak to this from so many different perspectives. But I'll tell you the main thing that's important about this, and it's similar to so many people that we talk to on this show. It's, why are you in professional services? What do you like about professional services? It's like this, almost like this addiction to getting the outcomes for our clients. And you're able to do that for so many. And so the value of growing and scaling our businesses is, hey, we're the ones that actually translate the promise into the customer outcomes. And so kind of our fingerprints are on all over, whether it's because it's pre-planned from a scalable perspective or a custom version of it. Our fingerprints are on the actual outcomes that the customers are receiving, and that's what keeps them kind of happy and satisfied. So I'd like to, I'd like to talk a lot about that today. And I'd like to talk about, because professional services plays that role, being so close to the customer experience and the customer outcomes, we have an important role to play within the enterprise, right? We're the voice of the market in so many ways, and we need to play across the different functions. And so I'd kind of like to dive into that here for a bit, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, no, happy to talk about that.
Perfect. Let's start talking about it maybe in this way. And we were joking about it. Dean and I had dinner together 2 nights ago, and we were joking about this a little bit, in this concept of, okay, there's pre-sales, there's all these pre-sales functions that exist, and then there's post-sales. And sales becomes this event where, like, oh man, sales, like pre-sales, that's such an interesting view of the world, because like everything that happens before something sells, of course, is pre-sales, but it's just kind of a funny label to put on it. Post-sales makes a lot of sense to me. But I'd like to talk about that category that we talk about as pre-sales all the time now, and specifically like the sales organization, the product organization, the engineering group. In a well-functioning enterprise, PS has to operate with all of those pre-sales functions and integrate with them and be able to partner with them effectively. Can you share some of your experiences on building meaningful partnerships across those functional lines?
Any organization I've been to, that's kind of my starting point. Is like, I have a CEO that I've worked for a couple of times, one of the best leaders I've ever worked for, and he has said software is a team sport. And I don't think I've found anything to be more true. And it really is. If the organization is going to succeed, we all have to be working together and rowing the boat in the same direction. So when I join an organization, I will start and I'll reach across the aisles and build a relationship. So, I think part of my reason for building a relationship with sales is a couple of reasons. One, I was in the role, so I understand the pressures that come along with it. It's not, everybody outside of sales thinks it's this glamorous role and they get all the parties and they get all the hoopla, but it's a tough role to fill. And I have tremendous respect for great salespeople, and they are the growth engine, right? Like, and I will say this to sales all the time, like, you are my job security. The better you perform, the more they need me around. So, let's partner together. And so when I think about partnering with sales, the importance of it is, number one, I want them to have faith and trust in our group that when they close a deal, when they pass it over to us, that's it. They don't have to think about it or worry about it. They're going after the next deal again and feeding that growth engine for the company. Two, I need them to sell our services, right? Like, there's an important piece that's been a mandate quite a bit recently, is that services has to start to become a profit engine and not just a cost center. So if they're selling the services, I need to make sure my relationship's strong with them. So I make sure they understand the value that we bring, so then they can sell the value to their customers, just like they do with our product. And then, they're helping me by hitting my mandate to turn that service operation into a profit center, because I can't do it without them. So instead of trying to go solo, it's partner with the team that can help get you there for sure. I also want them to see me as a partner to help them close deals. So if I can come in and help the customer understand, or the prospect understand, what they're going to get from a relationship after they sign the contract with us, I want to help with that. Again, I want to help let the customer know at the end of the day, I'm the person responsible and we take this seriously. So what sales is telling you, I'm here to make sure you understand that promise. And again, I think that goes a long way in building that relationship. And then again, I want sales to see services as that growth engine. We're not here to stop deals. We're here to partner with you to help speed up the process. And again, build that trust. So start to look at us as a differentiator when you're positioning us against the competition. Those are important things for me when, reasons working with the sales side.
Yeah. And that trust piece is so critical, because in order for PS to play its role effectively, they need to get pulled in earlier and more often into the sales process. Because, if we're getting deals tossed over to us at the last minute or all sorts of things like that, one, we can't affect it, but also we can't help, right? And so if we want to get pulled in more often, then we need to build that trust and build that credibility and actually support sales effectively. And that has to lead to positively impacting deals. And there's the right balance in that we play there. So how have you helped your team or right? I mean, think about some different kind of functional examples of it. Play the right role in supporting the sales process so that they can build that trust and they can build that credibility over time. Have there been any kind of best practices or guidance that you've provided your PS team when they are playing that role in supporting sales?
Yeah, so I think to me it's a couple of things. One is, just from a leadership level, as we're rolling out offerings or we're going to, look to enable sales, it's don't do it in a vacuum. Don't do it, by yourself. Go to sales and basically work with them and bring them into the fold and into that planning process. Like, this is what we're thinking. This is what the approach we're taking. We want your feedback. One, is that, is this going to make sure we're checking the box of what prospects are asking for, right? Two, you guys, is this something you feel comfortable that you could pitch and you feel like there's value into it, right? So don't, that was an important lesson I learned in my career. Like, I'm the services guy. I'm going to build it out and then we'll go tell sales. But sometimes there's, some of that friction. So bring them in, let them be part of the process. And then, they're now part of the solution that they're going to turn around and sell. From a team standpoint, a lot of it is around visibility and being just transparent with the sales team. When sales wants to know what's going on with a customer implementation, hey, let's think how we give them tools to self-service. Like, they don't need to come to me every single time and ask how a project's going. Let's make sure that whatever tool we're using to manage projects, we invite them in, we show them how to use it, so they can, just close that deal 2 months ago. Let me see how that's going. Oh, I know where to go. Oh, it's going well, or so it's getting sidetracked. And then go to that service rep to make sure that their assistance or what they have a good full picture of what's going on with that. So to me, it's about being transparent. It's about, again, make sure the team understands we have to work together. Sometimes as well, services, they want everything in a nice little pretty box, right? And hey, like, this one doesn't fit. Like, yeah, but again, remember what sales role is to close business. So let's not, if we get something that's, not in that pretty little box, it's still our responsibility to close it. Now, building a partnership with sales, we can go back and kind of understand what expectations were set, and we'll deliver to that. But we just, as services people, have to understand that everything isn't going to be nice and neat. Sometimes we're going to get messy, but at the end of the day, we still own it, and we're going to deliver on it. And having the team have that mindset, again, helps sales feel like that we can close some things that don't always fit in every single box, and our services team is going to figure out a way to get it over
Yeah, that
over
brings up kind of two thoughts to me. One is, don't we wish all customers were just the same, right? So the second thing is, um, our our service people have to understand, and I think this is what you're really good at, is that um, we're responsible, and forget about budget for a second. We're responsible for being adroit enough to understand the underlying client, the underlying tech, the underlying objective, and manage them through it. And that, I think, is one of the skills that we don't see enough, right? We see way too much of, hey, I do these four things, right? I do this is what I do that. Well, okay, but and I think you've said this from the very beginning. There's a couple of things. What do they need? How do we get them there, right? And I just wish that as a profession we were embracing that all the time across our industries, so that people were more relaxed about it. Hey, this is a skill
100%.
you have to have. You don't get just to be a technical person. You don't get to do just activities. You're responsible for success.
And to be honest with you, Dean, that's what I loved about the role so much, that it wasn't just, copy and paste. It was, oh, Anthony's a little bit different than what Dean was trying to do. And cool, let's figure this out. But just going back a little bit to, the importance of the services sales relationship. If you have that relationship, so when these things are not, in the box, you usually get, some headway from sales saying, hey, this one coming over the line, we had to be a little creative, or we had to do something. And then we know that going in, that's a game changer. We're proactively bringing that to the client that, hey, we know that this was a big thing, and whether it's a feature that's not released yet or something else, we're proactively hitting it. Hey, we're just, everything that they were told in sales is following through. Like, this company actually, what they preached about being a partner with us and making sure we're successful, I'm already starting to see the fruits of that. Like, they've already got that in their project plan. The communication happened. It's when the customer has to bring it up to you to say, oh, you guys didn't know that? That's where it starts to feel the ickiness and the bait and switch. And then that's where the team starts to feel like, oh, you just put me in this awkward position. Knowing that going in is, to me, just a game changer. And you don't have that if you don't have the relationship with the sales team.
Well, also the other thing happens is the customer is thinking now, and they should have thought earlier, same problem. We need to understand that, give that feedback, maybe change our deal a little, hopefully make a little more money. But I mean, we can't rely on sales to really uncover what the client's not really thinking through yet,
100%.
right? And often the buyer is not on the ground, right? Where the rubber meets the road. So again, like you said, adroitness is very important.
And what I used to try to do just to motivate the team, because, sometimes when they're like, I was like, hey, the company trusts us to figure this out. I take that as a badge of honor. Like, I think that's pretty awesome that they believe that we have the skill set and they have the faith in us that we can get it done. I'll take that every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
You touched on something earlier that there's a lot of pressure on right now that we're seeing and having lots of conversations with people about, which is this push for organizations to shift from a cost center to a profit center. And as we get involved and we start working with some of the professional services leaders and some of their teams on this, the main thing is, hey, in order to do that, and you said this perfectly, which is like, you're my job security, this organization is, but they're saying we're not pulled in enough, they're not pulling us through, they're not incentivized to sell us, they're right, there's all the reasons why this doesn't work. And one of the first things that we focus on is, how do you build that trust and rapport so that it can go both directions, so that you as a PS team, when you receive something, you have the trust and the confidence that, hey, they sold it in good faith and we can deliver on it, and perhaps we were involved. But then bidirectionally, right, they have to trust that we can actually deliver on something that they're selling in that situation. And so there's lots of tips and tactics involved in kind of managing the actual relationship and the sales conversations, and what role does PS play in having that conversation, what role does sales play, all in the selling cycle. But you said two other things that I want to highlight before we get off of this topic, which is, it is not building that trust is not limited to the actual selling event, right? There's things that happen way upstream of that, which is how do we make sure that the sales team gets brought along in our offer development journey to make sure that they have their fingerprints on it. They feel like they were a part of crafting a solution that their market and their customers need. And that's really important to build that trust and that tight relationship. So I love that. And then on the back end of it is, hey, even if sales isn't responsible for upselling and extending, and now we're in the post-sales environment, which we'll talk about here in a second, they still have a lot of interest in, they made a promise to somebody in the sales process, and how is that going? And so making sure that we can provide them with regular updates, making sure that we can give them confidence that we're delivering on something successfully, it's a really important process. And if you can put some self-service nature in that, and they can see not only here are the steps we're taking to make sure this is going to be successful, but here's the updates on the successes we've been having, that gets them to pull us back into those conversations more and more frequently. And so we got to think about this relationship with them beyond just the selling event, but everything upstream and downstream from that activity. So I love those call outs.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, some of the benefits I found from being transparent, allowing the sales reps to be, to have that self-service is they might get a call from a customer like, hey, the onboarding or implementation's not moving, like what's going on? I've had times where, because we've built so much trust, they're like, that's weird. And they'll go to the project and be like, oh, well, there's a note on here. They've tried to contact, the champion 5 times and it's been unresponsive. And then they start to be our partner and then, and help us reestablish with the customer that, oh, wait a minute, it was on our side. Because we've built the trust. So they don't automatically go, it's services again, not delivering. It's like, it's really weird because these guys always come through. It can't. And so with that self-service, they go back to the client and say, well, this is what I'm seeing. And let's, it's how we can get you guys back on track. So it's about building that equity and that trust. And it just, I don't know, continues to feed on itself day by day. And overall though, is you just can't work in a silo, and it takes some time. And I think again, just because I'm the services guy doesn't mean I'm all knowing and they, working with sales to understand like, hey, what's it take to, top sales guys who are selling services, like, what's your approach? Like, how do we bring that in to make sure we're keeping all this thing to the account? We're not just, this is the process, go do it, without talking to the team that actually is delivering.
And I know we're going to move to the post sale, and that's very important, particularly when we own our own financials, right? But because you did sales, we've all talked to salespeople on their point of view, and what they end up with is this black resistant box in PS, right? Like they're always unhappy with us. They're I can't get visual into them. They when I bring them in, it's a weird conversation. So hey, I love your statement. It's a team sport. It's a team sport, and if you can't accept that, then you're going to struggle, right?
Yep. And in any partnership, the other thing I try to do is, again, I'm coming to you with this ask. Here's what I'm going to deliver. Here's what I'm going to give you. I'm asking you for this, and here's what I'm going to give to you in return. And if I don't deliver that to you, by all means, you can call me out on it. And once I have that agreement, I can basically do the same thing. So if I'm seeing, okay, this is the 4th time this didn't happen, I've built that contract and that relationship that I can go back and say, we agreed on these things, and they're not happening. And it's just it's not the blame game or anything. That's just like, oh, you're right. Like let's get that back on track, because we did have that agreement. But I always try to, it's not just an ask. It's here's what I'm going to bring to the party as well.
I see your Denver Broncos gear and stuff in the background. So I'm going to try and use an analogy here to make this pivot, and we'll see how it lands. So what we're just talking about has a lot of complexity because it requires that trust and that relationship there. And so it operates in a way that's a little bit more like a quarterback, in this case, the sales organization, having to trust to know the wide receivers play and what they're going to do and where they're going to run in order for them to be successful, right? For the play to be successful, both parties have to be involved with that, but somebody is initiating that. So wide receiver can help write the playbook and be involved in some of that and say, hey, I saw this, I'm going to go this way this time. And so that's some of the offer development. Then they actually have to do that and be where they're told. And then they actually have to deliver and follow through on that, or else they're going to start looking elsewhere to somebody to pass the ball to. right? So that's kind of that piece of it. And yeah, we'll see if this lands. The post-sales side of the things is much more like a team that requires choreography in order to be successful, because there's so many different people that are doing the exact same thing at the same time. And we have customer success, we have professional services, managed services, support services, all of these things talking to the same client at the same time. And the client doesn't necessarily know who to go to for what different things yet. So we need to have the right answers and consistency and the ability to help navigate and coordinate that. But we all have to be operating from a very clearly defined and consistent playbook with consistent guardrails. And often we see organizations where the same siloed nature exists across all of those functions, and that's causing all sorts of breakdowns in customer outcomes and relationships. So if you don't mind, unless you want to enhance my analogy there, we can just dive right into it and say, what's your experience working on that post-sales different kind of challenge that still requires breaking down those silos and barriers?
100%. And I think your analogy was spot on, right? Because it's about that person has to be in that spot, because I'm going to throw in the ball and please don't drop it. Please don't.
Yeah.
Right. And
we did all this work to get the ball to you. Just grab it.
Yep. You grab it and you keep doing that. And you and I are, I'm going to keep coming to you and we're going to work well together. And it's a great call out, Anthony, because I think what we're trying to deliver, it's the sentiment, or, what we're actually trying to bring to the table. It's there. It's just, I think execution sometimes makes it messy. So as much as you're trying to bring in services, the success team, to your point, engineering and support, they're all working in silos. So the customer is getting contacted by different people. Those teams aren't communicating. They're getting different messages. They're like, oh, really? Let me go back and ask them. It's like, well, wait, you guys work together? Like, is this one org? And so the more we're trying to throw in to have the customer feel like everybody's got their back, the less it actually feels like that to the customer, because nobody's communicating, right? And so it's really is about building those relationships and understanding, like, okay, in this part of the life cycle for the client, who owns it? The deal just closed. They're going through implementation. Okay, we own it. It's almost like that racing. Okay, success. We want you guys to be in the know. And we'll, same thing. We'll make sure you understand what's going on. If you can build the relationship with the business owner, we're working with the champion. So, what I've also found is success trying to build that relationship with the champion. That's typically a person that I was just handed this project. I didn't choose this software. I was just told I got to implement it. So success coming in and trying to build a relationship there. It's not, to me, it's not the point of the org that really helps the long-term success. It's the champion's not going to be able to own the renewal. They're not going to be the ones that have, hey, here's why we bought this solution into our company. This is what we were trying to achieve. They're typically, I just got to implement this. So for services, if we can own the onboarding and whatever they need, customer comes to us. If we have to, oh shoot, this is going to be success because it is related to their contract, or it's engineering because we're running into a defect, or hey, that feature that was supposed to come out isn't there yet. Anthony, don't worry about it. I'm going to be the person that's going to get the right team. You just always come to me. Don't worry about it. And again, by having those agreements with those different teams, that will keep you in the know. But from this standpoint, like, just trust us to be the experts, and we'll pull you in when we need you to, so that in my opinion, it's a better customer experience. I don't want my team telling customer, oh, Anthony, that's a defect. Go open a ticket with support. Nope. I'm going to open the ticket with support. And ideally, if I've built enough of a relationship with support, I've worked it out to say, hey, support, when I've got a customer in onboarding and I put a ticket into support, here's what I'm going to ask of you. Can I get that to step 2 in the process? And so the customer isn't starting from ground zero. Again, what I'm going to bring to the table, we're going to do the troubleshooting you guys would have done, and we're going to verify it is a technical issue before we kick it over. If us doing that gets it to the second tier, whatever level 2 is, to get that through the process faster, it's a better customer experience because they're not going down to, step 1 again. To me, it just elevates the customer experience because they feel like they've got at this point, I don't need to go through an org chart to figure out map my issue to the person. I just know I go to Steve and it's fixed, and we're continuing progress, and we've built the trust. And then when it comes time to in the onboarding, there's that nice handoff for the customer. Okay, Dean's your success manager. Here's his role. Here's what he's going to do for you. Support's here to do this. This is what he can go to them. But when they're managing that onboarding, trying to learn the software, do their other job, just giving them another org chart to follow, I just don't believe is the right approach. And it lands a little flat.
Yeah, they're not going to remember 6 months later when they have a problem, who in the organization they need to go to get an answer. And that assumes that person didn't leave and change roles or do something else in the meantime. They know, who do I have a relationship with? Who do I trust? Oh, Steve is going to figure this out. And it's our responsibility not to impose our org structure and our org chart on their organization, right? However we're organized, that's not their problem. How they want to engage with us, we'll make sure that we get the right answers there.
The other thing that I've seen this lead to, right, is if I say go to support, support becomes the implementation engine. They're like, well,
eventually I'll just always go to support.
So I just implement through support, and then support gets frustrated, right? And they're like, wait a minute, they're asking knowledge questions or questions that should be in implementation. So it just creates more friction between the two teams when we should be working together to, support's got enough coming in from long-term customers, let alone throw, new customers on them, which again, it's all about the customer experience, and that just doesn't lead to a great customer experience.
Yes. So I'm going to give you a problem statement here. Put your chief customer officer hat on here. You see all of these different pieces working together. We are hearing a lot of, hey, PS organizations on this journey to become a profit center, or at least cost neutral to the organization. We're also seeing a lot of organizations looking at their customer success investment and spend and saying, what's our ROI on this, and putting tasks on the CS organization to find additional revenue opportunities, whether that's expansion or sometimes what we would even traditionally call professional services. So now we have two functions that are, even if all of what you said is true and we need to set the boundaries and the barriers, the expectation is, hey, you need to have the best relationship so that you can find those opportunities to make yourself change the financial impact of our function to the business so that we can get future investment. How do you think about that problem that feels like, in the spirit of things, like, yes, we want all of these businesses to add value to our bottom line and to our customers, but those two objectives seem in conflict with each other when there's only one or two people at the client organization that we should be managing a relationship with, and we should make that really kind of clean and simple for the client. So any thoughts on that problem that we've heard many times?
Yeah, if you think about it truly from, I got to drive expansion, or I got to prevent churn, right? Then to me, it's always reactive, right? Like when I've been in, the organization I've been part of, and we talk about churn, like, can we just stop talking about churn and let's talk about adoption? Because if you do that part right, you're not churn doesn't become an issue. Like, customers are just going to renew, because why wouldn't they? You're solving their problems, right? So I think the same thing when you specifically, like, I got to expand the client, or I have to prevent churn. I think you're focusing too much on reactive and prevention, because then you're just like, well, this customer's in danger, I got to go react over here, or this customer's not expanding. You just try these pushes. If you build the relationship with the business owner, and you have the dialogue to say, hey, whether you're a CSM or services, or like, it's about being a consultative, taking a consultative approach and asking questions like, what are you trying to do? Okay, well, what impact does that have? And then as you really understand their business and then ensure what they're actually achieving, what the software is delivering on that, then to me, it's, hey, Anthony, I know you said X was important to you, but did you know that we actually have a module that, is available to you that's going to solve that? And it's not a sales push at that point. It's just like, Steve has always done right by me trying to achieve what I need to. What? Sounds great. Like, how do we get that going? And I think when you continue just to work with the client to understand, what are you trying to do? Are we delivering on it? And if we're not, let's figure out a solution. And that could be, hey, you're not delivering on it, but we do have a service package to deliver on that. And maybe for some instance, we have to give that away, but we're still going to pitch the value. We're still going to sell it to the client. Like, this is what the outcome is going to be delivered. It would typically be X, but you're an important client. We're going to waive it or we're going to cut it. And what I've always, again, if you're truly working with the client because you want to make sure they're successful, I've just seen the outcome, kind of work out to what you're trying to achieve. So basically, you kind of get to the end result by focusing on the small things and not, to use your football analogy, you're not focused or at the 10-yard line. I got to get to the end zone 90 yards away. You're like, I got to get the first down. I get that first down, I get another first down. I'm like, oh, we're in the end zone. 90 yards was pretty easy. It's the same thing. To me, it's about continuing to be engaged with the client, making sure that we understand what they're trying to achieve, measure that they're actually getting there. If they're not, hey, let's have that conversation. Like you said, you wanted to do X. Looks like we're more closer to Y. Did things change? Or are we not delivering? Then let's own up to it and let's figure out a path to get you in the right spot. And I think if we operate more from that mindset, the expansion and the retention things in the deeper adoption are the result of that. It's not, shoot, I just got to make sure customers don't churn, and I'm going to go from one fire to the other and just make sure I've saved those customers for 6 months. Like, I don't want to take that focus. I want you guys to just feel like you've got the right tool to make sure we're still achieving those outcomes.
Yeah, I like that, right? Focusing on the controllable, almost like those micro outcomes that will ultimately lead to overall business success, and doing that in a way that says, okay, for this customer, what is the right thing to do here, and what is the right engagement approach, and how do we make sure we get the right outcome here? So it's measuring those little steps, the first downs, not the scoreboard, or even the process. Did we follow the process that we think is the right one to make sure that all of this works effectively every time? Even if it doesn't immediately translate to a point, it ultimately will move our organization in the right direction. And so that's where, going back to defining the role, defining the RACI, making sure that everybody's clear internally on how we're going to operate and what our overall mandate is, that starts to that gets us in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, even with success managers, I've been now part of 3 organizations that success was a newer evolution into the company, and success managers were one thing, and then all of a sudden they said, well, we want you guys to be more consultative. But there was no coaching on what that means and how to do it, and there was no, does the team have the right skill set, right? They went from one role to this role, and they weren't experts in the product. They weren't experts in the field. So, in their defense, there's like, I can't just go into a call and, act like I know everything. I got to bring someone else in. And I've always said, okay, but if we just teach them to be more curious, like they should have a level of the product to understand when the customer is telling us this is what the challenge is, then be like, oh my God, our product does that all day long. I just got to get you with our experts in services or customer education, right? So I don't need them to necessarily be able to be the person that can get under the hood and fix it, but dangerous enough to know that, God, we can solve that all day long. It's exactly what I've done for all my other clients. And just be a little more inquisitive. Like, ask some questions when the customer says, this is what's happening. Like, okay, well, what impact does that have? Or, and I think that just could arm the CSMs when they're trying to get up to speed, to come off as more of an expert, but at the end of the day, just ultimately caring about what the customer is trying to achieve.
That's a big takeaway, I think, for the entire conversation, because it touches on the sales and the post-sales and the all of those different parts of it. But I'll ask, is there anything you want to add as kind of the one thing that you want the audience to remember about this conversation? Any big takeaway that you want to leave everybody with as we wrap up here?
Yeah, again, I just go back to my initial point. If you start with the customer experience and the outcome and build everything else around that, I think that's the winning strategy. Like, we talked about the analogy of not shooting for the end zone every play, but where you need to end up. And if you start with that destiny, then you figure out the smaller steps you need to get there. And I don't know how you go wrong if at the end of the day you're delivering a great customer experience that also then supports what the business is trying to do, whether it be scalable, profitable, whatever the case may be. To me, that's been a winning strategy in the almost 20 years I've been in professional services, and the multiple organizations I've been asked to come into and build those functions out. And I just don't know how you go wrong if you're delivering a great customer experience.
Steve, it's been great to have you. We're going to have you back because I'd like to come back and dive into a lot of things you've experienced. Like now that we have more and more revenue, more profit, we have more upside, more upsell, more complexity. But so we'll have you back. But this has been really great. We don't often get someone who has such a great focus on the integration of team sport. So that's been a real, I hope, a real eye opener for everybody, and it's been really great.
Yeah, I love sports. I played sports in high school, and I was not a great athlete. I did win in playing high school football 2 years in a row. I won the 12th man award, which is basically the best teammate and the guy who tries the hardest. So team sports and just the team mentality is something I operate from.
Yeah, well, you say 12th man. Anthony went to Texas A&M, so he gets that one.
Nice.
And probably just saying it, you owe Texas A&M 10 cents.
Now you said it twice.
Oh, yeah, it's 2 bits now, 2 bits. Anyway, Steve, thank you so much, and we'll have you back.
All right, thank you guys. I really enjoyed this, and it was a great conversation. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that conversation with Steve. We didn't touch on it in too much detail on that particular conversation, but interestingly enough, as we were talking about the sales professional services partnership, that is exactly the next course that we're working on at Consultants Way, and it should be released later this month, which is the integration between professional services and how they support the sales team throughout the process, how they build that trust and relationship, how they navigate some of the customer conversations, and some best practices associated with that. We had lots of other topics in and around the commercial role that consultants play in the sales process or in the organization, but this role of sales support as a complete breakout course and topic is one that's coming out in June. So I encourage everybody to check that out. If you want to hear more podcasts like this and more episodes with future guests, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe, do all of those things. If you want to reach out to Dean or myself and not provide Dean feedback on his attire, our LinkedIn pages is the best place to do that, or you can always message the show at podcast@consultantsway.com. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.